This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. It began as a viral outbreak in China, but now is spreading to Europe and the Middle East. Over the weekend, Italy, Iran, and South Korea reported significant spikes in confirmed cases. Authorities are worried that the coronavirus, or COVID-19, has become difficult to contain. The rise in cases is also affecting financial markets, and public health officials say that now is the time to stop it. Health reporter Lori Johnson has the latest.
The number of cases in China increasing to 77,000, including 2,400 deaths, followed by Japan with 840 cases and 4 deaths, then South Korea with over 830 cases, including 7 deaths. Also, Italy quarantining some areas as it faces the first major outbreak in Europe, reporting more than 200 cases and 5 deaths. And in the Middle East, Iran with 43 cases and 12 deaths. Infectious disease specialists like the Cleveland Clinic's Dr. Frank Esper are analyzing a new report detailing the first 72,000 cases. He told CBN News the virus spreads through droplets.
We think that most times people are being infected when they are coughed nearby in a 6-foot radius or so, or sneezed in a 6-foot radius. It aerosolizes in that small area for a very brief amount of time. It is not like SARS. SARS was airborne. Measles is airborne. That's where the virus can lay around in the room for 2 hours, waiting for someone to inhale it. This coronavirus is not like that. It is mostly you have to be in the same room, in the same close proximity with another individual to be infected.
Eastern Virginia Medical School infectious disease Dr. Edward Oldfield says new information about people who carry the virus make it more difficult to control.
Now we're finding there's significant amounts of virus in the nasal passages and the oropharynx, even in people that have no symptoms.
That includes people who've already recovered from it. The good news, a vaccine and treatments possibly within months, fast-tracked because of COVID-19's similarity to SARS, a coronavirus from 17 years ago.
The protease inhibitor Kaletra had activity against SARS. They've already started a study in Wuhan. There's another experimental drug called remdesivir, and they've also started a study with that.
Experts say expect more deadly coronaviruses unless China deals with crowded, unsanitary markets where wild animals are sold and slaughtered, the kind where both SARS and COVID-19 reportedly first transferred to humans.
And Lori Johnson joins us now with more. Lori, what should we be expecting here in the U.S.?
Well, right now we have 53 confirmed cases of COVID-19. That sounds like a lot, but that includes 36 that just arrived back from that Diamond Princess cruise line last week. So far, no deaths in the United States, although the CDC says we should expect more cases. It will not surprise anyone. And here in America, the local governments and the healthcare industry is prepared with supplies, things like respirators, because this is a respiratory disease, and also coordination between the healthcare industry and government in case schools or businesses need to be shut down. We hope it won't get to that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned in your report that there does seem to be some good progress with a vaccine, with treatment. Tell us about that.
Right. There are 2 separate drugs that are being tested right now in Wuhan, and they should know within 3 weeks, Heather, whether or not they're having success. So that's something that we should be praying about and looking forward to. And regarding a vaccine, it looks like there should be a vaccine available to the general public within a year. That's about half as long as it takes normally, because this is a vaccine that was originally developed for SARS, and they tweaked it a little bit because SARS and COVID-19 are so similar.
So there's a silver lining there. I want to ask you, too, about the flu, because everyone keeps saying, well, shouldn't I care more about the flu? And so how do we put that all into perspective at this point?
That's true. The flu has killed 16,000 Americans so far this season. This is the worst flu season we've had in 10 years. It started started out with influenza B, and then last month we saw a drop in flu cases, so everyone thought this was great. The flu season was going to end early this year, but then influenza A kicked in and it has come roaring back. Among those deaths, Heather, 105 children.
Okay, so we still definitely are keeping our eye on the prize, which is the flu in the U.S. right now.
That's right. And it's interesting that the COVID-19 and the flu are transmitted exactly the same way with the droplets. The best way to protect yourself against both diseases is to wash your hands with warm soapy water for 20 seconds. Also, the alcohol sanitizers work well. Make sure that it's at least 70% alcohol. And then also, when you're sneezing or coughing, do it into the crook of your arm or into a tissue.
Not that hard. Okay, Lori Johnson, thanks for your insights.
My pleasure.
All right, and please do stay with us for the latest on the coronavirus as we continue to provide updates right here on the CBN News Channel and on CBNNews.com. Well, the virus is also affecting the economy. U.S. stocks took a huge tumble today after a coronavirus sell-off in overseas markets. The spike in virus cases and spread of the disease outside China caused investors to run for safety. Mark Martin joins us now with more. Mark.
Heather, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped more than 1,000 points in the afternoon, giving up all of its gains for the year. The Nasdaq fell more than 300 points, while the S&P 500 dropped more than 100. Meanwhile, the demand for bonds, gold, and other safe harbor assets jumped. As Lori Johnson reported, the coronavirus has infected more than 79,000 people around the world. China still has most of the cases and deaths, but the quick spread to other countries increased anxiety about the outbreak's threat to the global economy. Still, the Director General of the World Health Organization stopped short of saying the virus has reached a pandemic scale. At a news conference, he said the WHO was encouraged by the continued decline in cases in China.
Our decision about whether to use the word pandemic to describe an epidemic is based on an ongoing assessment of the geographical spread of the virus, the severity of disease it causes, and the impact it has on the whole society. For the moment, we are not witnessing the uncontained global spread of this virus, and we are not witnessing large-scale severe disease or deaths. Does this virus have pandemic potential? Absolutely, it has. Are we there yet? From our assessment, not yet.
And even though it has not been officially labeled a pandemic, the director of global macro research at Oxford Economics says the coronavirus could result in the world economy experiencing its first quarterly fall in seasonally adjusted output since the global financial crisis of more than 10 years ago. And a group chief economist at UniCredit says it's now a virtual given that global domestic output will suffer a major hit in the first quarter of this year. Heather, back to you.
Thanks, Mark. We'll be keeping an eye on that. President Trump is in India for a two-day visit to strengthen relations that have been strained by trade disputes. In western India, Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi both spoke to a massive crowd at a stadium in Ahmedabad, praising each other. It was the largest crowd ever in his political career, with over 110,000 people. Both leaders were hopeful as they looked ahead to U.S.-India negotiations.
And I am pleased to announce that tomorrow our representatives will sign deals to sell over $3 billion in the absolute finest state-of-the-art military helicopters and other equipment to the Indian Armed Forces. I believe that the United States should be India's premier defense partner, and that's the way it's working out. Together, we will defend our sovereignty, security, and protect a free and open Indo-Pacific region for our children and for many, many generations to come.
Following the event, Trump and the First Lady headed to New Delhi to prepare for formal talks Tuesday morning. And for more political news and analysis, be sure to catch Faith Nation this evening. You can watch it right here on the CBN News Channel. Well, February is a time to celebrate African Americans who have helped to shape our nation, but Black conservatives are often excluded from the celebration. Charlene Aaron shares one example.
A new documentary about Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas explores his life, his faith, and his path toward conservative ideals. It also highlights his struggles, both within and outside the African American community.
I will nominate Judge Clarence Thomas to serve as Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court.
Created equal, Clarence Thomas, in his own words, goes back to Thomas's childhood in the segregated South and his transition from a Black Panther to conservative ideals. The film also showcases his contentious Supreme Court nomination.
That's when all heck broke loose.
Judge Thomas began to use work situations to discuss sex.
We know exactly what's going on here. This is the wrong Black guy.
Thomas has served as a Supreme Court justice for nearly 3 decades. He's often ignored, however, instead of celebrated for his accomplishments, which include being the second African American on the court. Ken Blackwell of the Family Research Council addressed the issue recently in USA Today, writing, "Don't forget Justice Clarence Thomas in Black History Month celebrations."
In this time where you have to be politically correct, you have to adopt the language and the worldview of the left, Clarence Thomas does none of that. And therefore, he is seen as a clear and present threat to their orthodoxy. And they do whatever they can to either erase his contribution or to totally ignore it.
In the documentary, Thomas shares how he was caught up in racist and often violent demonstrations at one point in his life. Then a spiritual encounter changed his life.
I saw what I had become, lashing out at every single thing. And then I asked God that if you take anger out of my heart, I'll never hate again.
Blackwell says that faith has been a guiding beacon that Thomas brought to the High Court.
Clarence Thomas has come to embrace a notion that it was at the heart of our republic. And that is that our basic freedoms are gifts from God. He understands that, it is the human conscience which is at the heart of our individualism, and protecting the freedom of the human conscience, protecting religious liberty, protecting the centrality of God in the life of our nation is Clarence's gift.
For that reason, Justice Thomas is more than worthy to be honored now and for years to come. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Coming up, what new research shows about the number of people who consider themselves religiously unaffiliated. But before we go to break, here is a look at what is trending right now on CBNNews.com.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Political scientists who study religion and politics may have discovered a potential bombshell finding about the religiously unaffiliated, also known as nuns. These are people who respond with nothing in particular on surveys that ask them about their faith. Well, new data shows that the growing number of nuns appears to be leveling off with Generation Z. That's those who are born after 1995. Joining us now with more is Dr. Ryan Burge, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Eastern Illinois University. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Burge.
Hi, Heather. Thanks for having me.
The data shows that with each generation, those who say they're secular or not affiliated with any religion has been growing, but now the rate appears to be slowing with Generation Z. So is it possible that these young people are more religious?
Potentially. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves now because Generation Z is still very, very young. For instance, the oldest member of Generation Z today is about 25 years old. And the data that we have, a lot of it only goes back to 2018 when the oldest members of Generation Z were only 23 years old. So what we know is that as people sort of move into adulthood, move away from their childhood, move away from the religion of their parents, oftentimes they drift further and further away from faith as they move into their 20s and early 30s. And then some do come back once they get married and have kids. With Generation Z, we haven't seen that whole sort of life cycle effect happen yet because many of them are in their mid-20s or early 30s and haven't been able to get married or have kids. So I will say it's to be determined, right? The data is not there yet for us to make strong conclusions, but I'll say this. About 42% of millennials are religiously unaffiliated, and it's about 42% of Generation Z right now. Now, compare that to other age groups. For instance, the silent generation, which are people born between 1925 and 1945, only 18% of them are religiously unaffiliated. So it's still much more unaffiliated than older generations, but we are seeing a leveling off, which was hopeful for evangelicals especially.
Okay, yeah, that is really interesting. I want to also ask you, you've been doing a lot of work lately looking at political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, and people of faith in both of those parties. Let's start with the Democrats. What do we know about Democrats and how they identify when it comes to faith?
Sure. So if we look at 18 to 35-year-old Democrats, so the youngest age demographic, 48.5% of all Democrats between the ages of 18 and 35 are atheists, agnostics, or nothing in particular, which is crazy if you think about it, because really they only make up about 30% of the population. So that's the youngest Democrats. Now, if you look at the other part of the box, which is the oldest Republicans, 75% of Republicans over the age of 65 in America today are white evangelicals, white Catholics, or mainline Protestants. So really you're seeing this sort of God gap get wider between the Democrats, who are largely becoming the party of those who don't have a religious affiliation, and the Republican Party is becoming the party of those who are Protestants or Catholics of traditional faith.
And is that what we've been seeing all along, this so-called God gap growing, and it is just continuing to grow?
Yes, it's so of white liberals, half of white liberals today identify as nothing in particular, atheist or agnostic, and that's the largest we've ever seen. We're going to see the future where the Republican Party is primarily going to be the party of white and Christian, and the Democratic Party is largely becoming the party of those without religious affiliation and non-white. For instance, 55% of Democrats today are white. 45% are non-white. The Republican Party is almost 90% white. 87.5% of the Republican Party is white today. So really we're seeing not only a racial separation between the two parties, we're also seeing a religious separation between the two parties as well.
Really incredible polarization, something that I know is sobering for a lot of us. Dr. Burge, thanks for your time and insights.
Thanks, Heather. Appreciate it.
Still ahead, an iconic cross standing since World War II days gets a court victory in Florida.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. A World War II-era cross will remain standing on public property in Pensacola, Florida, where it has been since 1941. It is a huge win for religious freedom in federal court. Our Mark Martin talked with FaithWire.com's Dan Andros about the significance of this win over the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Dan, a big circuit court ruling about a landmark cross in Pensacola. Talk about that.
Yeah, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals just last week, ruled that a huge World War II era cross could remain standing, and this came after really a lengthy legal battle.
Tell us a little bit more about the cross. I understand it's been an icon in Pensacola since 1941.
Yeah, the cross was actually put up as America was sort of preparing and getting ready to get into World War II. And so the city put it up, and it was, obviously a symbol of hope and comfort and prayer and putting trust in God at that time, as the nation was really, people, I mean, we look back now and we just know that America, came out on top in World War II. But of course, that outcome wasn't so certain back then. We didn't have the strength of the military that we do now, and it had to be built up. So it was not actually a certain outcome at all. So to see that people said, you know what, they put their faith in God, and they went to, wanted to show that. And so Pensacola did it in their way with this big cross. And I mean, people forget, Mark, that FDR would do prayers right over the national radio broadcast all the time. You watch these documentaries, and it's almost stunning to hear the president lead the country in prayer. So, but the cross was just Pensacola's way of doing the same thing.
The group Freedom from Religion sued, Dan, as you know, to have it removed, and they're working to remove faith, or they're trying to remove faith and religion from America, but they did not win this time. Would you say the tide is turning when it comes to protecting freedom of religion?
I'd like to say I hope so. I mean, they're very much relentless on this topic, as we've all covered here on CBN and on FaithWire many, many times, seeing the efforts that they would go to try to take this idea of separation of church and state and make it something into not at all what the founders intended. And of course, they, were just breaking free from an absolute monarchy and didn't want to, repeat the same thing here. But that doesn't mean they couldn't mention prayer or couldn't mention God. And clearly the founders did so many, many times. And so Freedom from Religion Foundation really takes it an extra step. In this particular case, they went far out of bounds. Actually, all the courts and really pretty much the whole town didn't want to go along with this. They were just kind of felt like they were trapped between a rock and a hard place when it came to the law. And so I think everyone was relieved when the court was able, even the people in the court, they were, finally glad that they found a way to keep this thing standing, because it's such an entrenched part of history there in Pensacola, and, just one of many landmarks of different kinds that they have. So it was viewed as excessive by Freedom from Religion Foundation, but hopefully that's a trend where, it starts repeating across all these other instances where they sue.
Well, it's wonderful. The court ruled in favor of the cross. It's a nice victory to celebrate. Dan Andros with faithwire.com. Thanks so much for your time, sir.
Thanks, Mark.
And you can catch FaithWire's Faith versus Culture tonight on the CBN News Channel at 9:30 Eastern. And don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Thousands of mourners are gathered at the Staples Center in Los Angeles today to say farewell to Kobe and Gianna Bryant. The celebration of life features music and retrospectives on Kobe Bryant's career, along with speakers reflecting on his impact on his sport and the world. The NBA basketball superstar and his 13-year-old daughter will be honored in a public memorial at the arena where Bryant played for the Los Angeles Lakers. The two died along with 7 others on January 26th in a helicopter crash. Bryant became active in film, television, and writing after his retiring from professional basketball in 2016. And that is it for this edition of CBN's News Watch. Remember that you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online at cbnnews.com. Also, please tell us what you think about the stories that you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or just talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope that you will join us next time. Have a great day.